does the heart beat faster during exercise? Hi, I'm Larry Johnson. I am a professor at Texas A&M University, and today we're going to talk about the circulatory system. To answer the question, why does the heart beat faster during exercise, we need to look at the needs of living multicellular organisms, components of the circulatory system, and the functions of the circulatory system. Now, multicellular animals, that's us, need three mechanisms. They need a way to distribute oxygen, nutrients, hormones, to collect waste, and to transport that waste to excretory organs. The circulatory system, also called the cardiovascular system, as the heart actually pumps to increase blood pressure. This system is composed of two sets of closed vessels. One goes to the lungs and one goes to the rest of the body. And they're connected only at the heart. Each of these two sets of vessels have arteries coming out of the heart, capillaries for exchange, and then they have veins as it returns to the heart. And here we can see the heart and the arteries in red and the veins in blue, and the capillaries are too small to see at this. So the heart, when it contracts, to pump oxygenated blood to the body and deoxygenated blood to the lungs. So the function of the circulatory system as a multi-organ system, remember arteries, capillaries, veins, and heart, that it circulates blood to transport nutrients, oxygen, carbon dioxide, hormones, and blood cells throughout the body to provide nourishment and waste removal as it aids in fighting diseases, stabilizing temperature and pH, and helps maintain homeostasis around the cells at its steady state. There's a lymphatic system that parallels the circulatory system and has one-way vessels. That's function is to return the fluid to the heart. That is, if you get a bee sting, it will swell, and it's due to fluid leaking out of the blood vessels. That's what the swelling is. You have to return that fluid to the heart, and that's what the lymphatic system does. So whenever the heart produces the blood pressure by contraction or beating, and that's seen as variation in pressure. We can see variation in pressure here. It's being the pressure levels. But then a steady flow in the capillaries and veins. So it varies only in the arteries. It doesn't vary, pressure doesn't vary in the veins per se. It doesn't pulse, as we see. And so we can see that pulsing in through there. And this is really one heartbeat as seen as the various pressure in throughout the arterial system. Now, so whenever you pulse the arterial system, that's eliminated with the smallest artery, and then no longer does it pulse in the capillaries and veins. Also, you might note that when the heart contracts, it's 120 millimeters of mercury comes into the arterioles, the arteries, and then when it relaxes, it doesn't go to zero, it stays 80. And this is due to the fact that the pressure is maintained in the arteries during heart relaxation by the recalling of stretched arteries. So if this is part of the heart, the ventricles, when it contracts, 120 millimeters of mercury goes into the largest arteries, which has a lot of elastic tissue, and it stretches. Then when the heart relaxes, it goes to 2 millimeters of mercury, but not so in the blood vessels themselves because they recall, and that maintains 80 to 100 millimeters of mercury as the low component of the pressure in the arterial side. So the contraction of the heart, of the cardiac muscles in the heart, produce the blood pressure, and the rate of contraction is under nervous control, with the sympathetic stimulating and the parasympathetic inhibiting the contractions of the heart. That is the rate of contractions. Contraction of smooth muscle in the wall, and here we see smooth muscle in the wall of the vessel. This is the arteries. It's also in the veins, none in the capillaries. The contraction of that smooth muscle reduces or regulates the blood flow without totally restricting it. So it doesn't close it up, but what it does is it reduces the flow in it. Now, in the wall of the blood vessels, we see connective tissue that connects things. We see muscle, and there's more muscle on the arterial side than the venous side. And then we have elastic tissue for the recall that we were speaking of a while ago, in through there, some elastic tissue in veins, and then all blood vessels, whether arteries, capillaries, or veins, have the same endothelial cell lining them to occur, as we can see. No muscle or elastic tissue in the capillary one because you have to have exchange. In fact, there's variation in the wall of the vessels to accommodate both mechanical factors, that is, resistant to the pressure, and a bigger resistance is needed in the arteries than in the veins, and that's why the walls are thicker in the artery than the vein. But also they have to accommodate the metabolic needs, and the metabolic needs is you need to have no components in the wall other than the endothelial cells that you see there for exchange of nutrients and waste. So as a consequence, we see variation in the different vessels. This is like a muscular artery, or this one is a vein. You see a big lumen, that's fairly smaller lumen, and a very small lumen in this little capillary that we see there. So there's variation in size and wall thickness and shape of the lumen to facilitate the various functions, whether it's restricting blood flow, conducting it to the capillaries, or the capillaries exchange, or returning to the heart. The thin wall capillaries meet the metabolic needs for nutrients and gas exchange and waste collection. And here we can see the little capillaries. This little capillary there, there's the endothelial cells of the capillaries that we see there, and you can see that they're branching. This happens to be a muscle in the tongue. Now there's three types of capillaries. One is a continuous capillary with no break in it. And for nutrients to come through, they have to come through these vesicles to go through there. There's another one that's fenestrated, and that has little weak parts in the wall of the cells, the endothelial cells, but it's a little slit over them, and that allows fluid to leak out. And then there's another one, the sinusoidal, has gaps, gaping holes within the endothelial cells, and that allows the fluid to bathe the cells below, outside the bloodstream. So if we look at these capillaries, you see continuous ones, no leaking in muscle and brain. You can't have leaking in those two. And then you have the fenestrated ones. The blood plasma can escape. The fluid can escape, not the cells, and that occurs in the glomerulus of the kidney, where you want to filter the blood. And then we have a sinusoidal, where you have blood plasma bathes the functional cells outside the vessel, as you see here in the liver. So in the liver, you want maximum exchange, maximum fluid exchange in the kidney, but then none leaking in certain places of the body. Now, I mentioned that the lymphatic system returned the blood, the fluid that leaks out of the blood to the heart. If you've ever been bitten by a bee or stung by a bee, you know it swells. So the fluid leaks out of right after the capillaries, leaks out of there, and then it has to be returned through the thoracic duct that we can see. The circulatory system transports waste to excretory organs like the lungs and the kidneys. And here we see the lungs with a conduit out to the outside. So you have a conduit outside. And then we see the air spaces inside the lung, and all of these are covered with capillaries. So capillaries so that deoxygenated blood can come in here, and carbon dioxide moves out of it into the air space to be discharged. And as you breathe in air, and oxygen is high in concentration, it diffuses into the blood space for it to carry oxygen throughout the body. So the respiratory system has a direct conduit to the outside. So it brings the air close to the blood to take the oxygen out and remove the carbon dioxide out of the blood. The urinary system filters the blood and discharges to remove waste into the environment. So the kidneys are doing that, and you see the capillary network here of this glomerulus that filters the blood that we see. So why does the heart beat faster during exercise? Exercise increases the muscle activity and increases the amount of nutrients and oxygen consumed. So exercise increases the respiratory rate. And that stimulates receptors in the respiratory system to trigger the sympathetic nervous system to increase the heart rate. During exercise, the heart beats faster to increase the flow of blood, the cardiac output, to deliver the necessary blood flow to the muscle to meet the need of exercise-induced increased demand of nutrients, oxygen, and waste removal. Although exercise increases the metabolic need, the brain controls the rate of the heart contraction during exercise, first to prepare for the increased metabolic need that's coming. So the brain controls the heart rate, not the need. So the brain knows the need's coming, so it starts the heart rate increasing before there's a need. To illustrate the brain control of the heart rate, you can increase your heart rate by just thinking about exercise. During exercise, the sympathetic nervous system can increase the heart rate by 3 times and also increase the force of contraction. So you go from 5 liters per minute at a resting state of cardiac output to 20 to 25 liters per minute to increase, to meet the demands of the cells. So why does the heart beat faster during exercise? The brain stimulates the sympathetic nervous system to increase the heart and the cardiac output during exercise in anticipation of increased metabolic needs for oxygen, nutrients, and waste removal of exercising cells. Therefore, the brain-induced increased cardiac output keeps up with the demands to distribute oxygen and collect, transport waste of multicellular organisms even during exercise. Thank you.